There's a shift that is happening where these models are going from predicting behavior to manipulating behavior.
Welcome to 1984.
You always have to have good intro music. That's what I learned from the people over at AEW and WWE and TNA Pro Wrestling. Or is it Impact now? Anyway, either way, wrestling is awesome. Now for the main course. I think every single one of us at some point has asked ourselves, why am I getting an ad for something that I've never searched? I've never told anybody about. I've never as much as looked in the direction of that product. Yet I thought about that product and now I'm getting an ad for it. We're going to get to the answer, but before we start, remember, this is just information. It's a discussion. It's an academic discussion. I am no super authority. This is just the result of other people's research and my research being conveyed to you for the purposes of trying to make your life better and that of those around you better. Let's go. First, we want to define a couple of terms. Skynet. Skynet is a term, of course, yes, a nod to the Terminator movie, is a term that I'm going to use. And when I use Skynet, I'm talking about a system of explicitly and implicitly interconnected data gathering sensors. Those sensors may be actual physical sensors, or they may just be a form that you filled out and shoved into a database. They gather this data and then they feed it into this other system, a term that I have coined called The Matrix. Yes, a nod to the 1999 sci-fi classic. The Matrix takes all of the data from Skynet and then uses a series of algorithms to process and analyze that data in order to build models that can predict human behavior and eventually influence it. We'll get to that at the end. So remember, Skynet is all of the data that is being gathered. The Matrix processes that data and then builds these models and starts predicting things. What you have to realize is that none of this is like this super conspiracy thing, or there isn't a question as to whether or not these systems exist. They exist. They are out there. The advertising ecosystem is a great example of it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But long and the short of it is, you can verify the existence of this system and these systems. You know these conclusions are real. And you know what? If you've never had an ad appear about something that you've never told anybody, never searched anything about, let me know. I'm curious because I've presented this to thousands of people and nobody has ever raised their hand and said, you know what? That's never happened to me, because it's happened to all of us because we exist in the 21st century. Let's talk about a couple of other terms we're going to be using. I use the terms loosely, data and telemetry. Of course, telemetry is the gathering of data using sensors and then sending that data somewhere. But for our purposes, data is information that you explicitly contribute to Skynet. Telemetry is data that you implicitly contribute to Skynet. What do I mean by implicitly? Well, think about this. If you're walking through a mall with your Bluetooth on, you are not telling that mall where you are, but because of the way the Bluetooth protocol works and the system of retail beacons, retail Bluetooth beacons that are all over that mall, you are implicitly contributing information to Skynet because it's being gathered up, right? So remember, data, explicit, telemetry, implicit. I know the technical definitions are different, but you're on this YouTube channel, so let's just go with it. And when we have data, I categorize it into 6 different categories. There's 6 types of data that I use in my research, or at least those are the categories that I came up with. The first one is government data. That's stuff like your passport logs, a driver's license, income tax records, social security, or whatever the equivalent is for your country. Then official records. I consider an official record something like a utility record, something that you don't have much say in, meaning you can't really flub it. You can't not exist without it. An example is your utilities. Your utilities would be official records. You got to pay for electricity. You got to pay for garbage service. You got to pay for gas or whatever it is. Next is the category of service provider data. Service provider data is something like the information that goes into your gym membership. When you sign up for a gym membership, type in all your stuff, give me your firstborn, whatever it is. It goes into a database. That is the service provider data. Other service providers include banks, include your cell phone company, so on and so forth. Then you have online platforms. While many service providers also have online platforms, the distinction is that the service provider doesn't have their entire business model staked on being an online platform. A bank will still survive even if you don't use their app. Online platforms, they rely on that. Online platform data would include your posts on Facebook as well as the back end data that Facebook is collecting on you. The next category is breach data. Breach data is data that was taken from other types, from any of the other categories without the authorization of the data holder. So that could be anything from the 23andMe hack to the OPM hack and whatever. Last category of data is aggregated data. The reason I put this one last is because aggregated data, which is usually accessible via a data broker or a data aggregator, you've seen those sites, $29.99. You won't believe what your background check says about you. It's pretty shady, so just, make sure that you pay that money, because you got to check it. Don't pay for anything. I'm kidding. That's a joke, not an advertisement, not a plug. All right, so aggregated data. These companies take data from anything they can possibly find. There could be a grocery list on the floor. These companies will pick that thing up, pop it into their database, and build their profile. So aggregated data takes the other 5 kinds of data and just puts them all in one place. You have legitimate aggregators, and then you have not so legitimate aggregators. So here are the 6 categories of data. Then let's talk about telemetry. There are way too many different types of sensors that collect telemetry, but we're going to cover them in a use case that you're familiar with. For example, your phone. Your phone has a barometric pressure sensor, accelerometer, gyroscope, ambient light sensor, microphones, cameras, magnetometer, fingerprint reader, touch sensor. Wow, it's got all of those things collecting implicit data. For example, you don't tell your phone that you are turning it around. You don't say, phone, I am turning you around. The act of turning the phone over is what provides that data to your phone. I did say that telemetry requires that information to be moved from one place to the other. If only your phone had a way to transmit that data. Yeah, it's got a cellular module, Wi-Fi module, Bluetooth module, RFID, and some of them even have a satellite communication module. Check it out. Now you understand that there is data everywhere, there's telemetry everywhere, but what does that have to do with an ad showing up on your feed for something that you've never even told anybody about? Well, I'm glad you asked. How bad is it really? Let's look at the old sources of data that were used, or the traditional methods that were used to land an ad in front of you. Back in the day, before the digital revolution, we had Nielsen boxes, people did surveys, you even had focus groups where you'd have some dude and, with a little, what's that thing called again? A clipboard standing behind a two-way glass looking at them. Ooh, are they liking the cereal? What is going on here? And you even had random hunches. Like, do we make the can orange or do we make the can purple? Orange. How did you come to that conclusion? Yeah, I got a hunch. Those are ancient sources. Then we evolved to traditional sources when it came to the digital revolution. When people started having the ability to browse the web, we were giving these advertisers a whole lot more information. We were feeding Skynet, and the Matrix was also getting more and more complex, and it was really starting to understand the data that Skynet was collecting a whole lot better. This is because we provided it with our search history, browsing history, voter registration records, financial information, charitable donations. All of this stuff started being picked up by Skynet, processed by the Matrix, and this stuff started getting pretty good. So good that, as you might have remembered from the previous video, that 2012 example where a little girl was sent a "congratulations, you're pregnant" package by Target was achieved just using this. If you want to read the whole article, check out the article here. But the point is that Target was able to, in 2012, allegedly, analyze seemingly non sequitur events and come to eerily accurate predictions of human behavior. Wow. And those are the traditional sources now. We have since crossed the Rubicon. We have next generation sources, which instead of taking just data into account, are now starting to take telemetry into account. All of these things are collected by your phone, sent up to Skynet, processed by the Matrix, and that's how they come to these conclusions. Think about it this way. Your phone knows if you have insomnia. Do you know how your phone knows whether or not you're sleeping well? All I need is your gyroscope, and I can say whether or not you're having a good night's sleep. Why? Because most of the time, when someone's not having a good night's sleep, every so often, they're going to get their phone, they're going to turn it around to check the time and turn it back down. All I have to do is set a little alert or do a little search. Tell me anyone who during the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. regularly turns their phone over more than 1 or 2 standard deviations away from the average. And now I'm going to start sending you ads for pillows, for sleep medication or whatever the heck it is. I can go further and get really, really, really creepy. Get this. All I need is your gyroscope. And I'm going to tell you how many times you go to the bathroom during the workday. You know how? Well, man, I need the barometric pressure sensor as well. Here's what I would do. I would know what your regular pattern is and that of your colleagues by simply geofencing your office, collecting this data. I'm going to get into how this is done a little bit later. I'm just getting a little bit into a technical example right now. So your phone generally lays flat, but during your day in the office, you're going to turn it around. Cat meme, dog meme. Ooh, Bitcoin's up, down again. Oh, you're just turning it around. At some point, you're going to pick that phone up and it's going to move. Believe it or not, I know how tall you are and how far you're walking because the phone is bounding. I can know whether you're in a cab, whether you are walking, whether you are on an airplane based on the accelerometer, the gyroscope, their barometric pressure sensor, which can detect doors opening and closing. So the point is, I'm walking. I know that you're walking a certain distance. I'm going to hear a door, or I'm not going to hear. I'm going to feel a door open and close with that barometric pressure sensor. Then I'm going to feel another door open and close, but the barometric pressure is going to change slightly less because it's a stall door. Then your phone is going to change elevation and you're going to use it at a 45-degree angle. Then it's going to get put down for a short period of time. It's going to go flat again or wherever it is you put your phone when you're cleaning up. The phone is going to start moving again. It's going to stand next to the sink, hopefully, and then you're going to turn on the water. Who's ever gotten that thing on their iPhone where it says, I'm not charging because I detect humidity in the port? Well, your phone likely can detect some humidity depending on the phone, and there's other factors in play. I am using broad generalizations here for the sake of illustrating an example, all right? Because I know there's always someone, well, I believe that's usually me that's doing that, but point is, we're just generalizing stuff. Now I know how long you spent in the bathroom, when you went to the bathroom. If you do that too many times in the day, not enough times of the day, if you spend too much time, if you don't spend enough time, I now know how to send you an ad. You might get an ad for, I don't know, Metamucil, and you might think, wow, I was thinking of buying this because I had some trouble in the bathroom, but how did the phone know? Now you know how it knows. Combines telemetry. It combines the telemetry not only of your phone and your devices, but that of your cohort around you. It compares it at scale across giant data sets to not just predict human behavior, but influence it. We're getting to that, just a little preview. Examples of this are Uber in 2018 got in trouble for detecting whether people were drunk or not by seeing if they were hitting the keys in a different pattern. How many typos are you making? How close are you to a bar? When's the last time you called an Uber? Some researchers are even doing early onset Parkinson's detection because the imperceptible movements, well, imperceptible to humans, are picked up by the sensors on the phone, and they can tell you whether you are at risk for Parkinson's disease. This is pretty cool. And you might be asking, who's actually doing this kind of stuff? Well, let's look at the MarTech map from 2023. This is just a sampling of the companies involved in this advertising ecosystem that is pulling all of this data, all of this telemetry from everywhere. This is Skynet. If you're wondering what Skynet is, this is Skynet. They will get you the data. And then there are different companies who have their own matrix. And sometimes there's matrices that are, is that matrices, matrices? Anyway, there are companies that have their own internal algorithms which process this. And sometimes they even share their conclusions with each other. One thing to understand is that all of this information is available in 3 different ways. Having all 3 is the holy grail, but that is not always achievable. Sometimes it's improbable, other times it's impossible. Let's explain the 3. First, on demand means I can get the information when I want it. At scale means I can get all the information that I want. In real time means that when I get that information, it is the most up-to-date current information. Let's do a quick example. On demand, I want to know who bought a cup of coffee. Great. Here, I can tell you certain people who bought a cup of coffee. Great, but I want all of the people in a certain zip code. Okay, cool. We got that. We have everyone in this zip code who has bought a cup of coffee. Yeah, but I want that data set to be updated to the second. I'm sorry, we don't have that. Our database only updates every 24 hours, so you don't have real-time access. So you see that? You can get data on demand, at scale, in real time, combinations of either one. And of course, the holy grail is having all 3. Let's start giving some examples of how this is actually being used out in the wild. Let's start with your car. Geez, your car is collecting so much information on you. Your car knows when you're using your turn signal and they know how much your passenger weighs. Think about this. If I am somebody who is looking to sell weight loss medication, who would have thought that I could just start asking car companies, hey, tell me where the highest concentration of overweight car owners are. You would have never thought this. I want to know where people are overweight. Well, let me just go to the car manufacturers and say, tell me anyone who has bought one of your cars and regularly uses it where the seat says that the person weighs more than 200 pounds. Crazy, right? And you see, this is from Toyota's car. It just says right on there, your car is collecting this information. Next time you're in a rental car, just look at the list of Bluetooth devices, and everyone probably left their old Bluetooth device connected. Some clothing companies are now putting RFID in 100% of their clothing. Lululemon is one of those. I talked to an employee at the store, and the employee said that they do it for inventory tracking purposes. But here's what I would do with that. I would put RFID readers in front of my store, and as soon as you walked in, I would detect that you have a Lululemon piece of clothing on. I would then find out what that Lululemon piece of clothing is, and then I would send you an ad immediately to your phone or just put it on the screen and say, hey, did you buy that Lululemon shirt? You know what? It's haunted. You should buy mine instead. Or I would just say, hey, are you tired of that Lululemon shirt that you bought back in 2016? It looks like you haven't bought one in a while. Here, buy one. How did they know? Well, it's because they're collecting this data from all over the place and they're starting to analyze it at scale. Next time you're walking through a mall or an airport, look for signs like these. This is a sign from Simon Malls. I ask myself, why would Simon Malls have this sign? It's so nice of them to say that they don't want me to do any of this collection. I theorize that it's because they are already doing the collection and they don't want your stuff to interfere with their collection, or they want you to pay for their collection. They are not doing this for a nefarious purpose, in my opinion. Think about it. If I can prove to you as a customer that there is a lot more traffic on this side of the mall, I can charge you more for a retail spot on this side of the mall. Moreover, I can come to conclusions of the socioeconomic status of my clients based on what phone they have, how long they loiter in front of what store, what transactions they do while they're at the mall. I can gather all of this data. Look at the airport here. This is an airport in the Netherlands. They are telling you clearly, we are doing Wi-Fi and Bluetooth tracking. We are collecting telemetry. So again, what we're doing here is showing you real world examples so you could see that none of this is fantasy. None of this is a spiral conspiracy rabbit hole or anything. This is just how the system works. I think one of the things that we fail at a lot is we immediately jump to a conclusion that something is a conspiracy when it might just be something that we fail to understand properly and it's right out in the open. I forgot who said this, but there's a quote that I'm obviously about to butcher, which says that any advanced enough science can easily be mistaken for magic. I think that's a little bit of what we're doing now. Anything that we don't understand immediately is a conspiracy theory, but when we just do a little bit of research, we find that, oh, it's just, this is how things are. And this stuff isn't just collected in real life. This is also collected through your digital activity. So let's look at a little bit of an example here. We are now going to go to a website, let's say ESPN.com. We're going to do that using a standard computer that we bought from a store. Let's go. First, your computer is likely an Intel-based computer. Intel is collecting on you as evidenced by. Okay, HP is collecting on you, which is the manufacturer of the computer, Hewlett-Packard. Then you're using Microsoft Windows. They tell you they're collecting on you. It's pretty evident. The terms and conditions are very, very clear. Then you are using a Chrome browser. You think Google is collecting on you via Chrome? They're telling you right here. Great. So now I'm being collected by the chip manufacturer, the computer manufacturer, the operating system manufacturer, and the browser manufacturer. Oh, goodness. Then your ISP is collecting on you, obviously, because you need to access the internet somehow. Once you leave the ISP, is it over? No, you get to the actual website and the actual website itself is collecting on you. Look, a simple visit to ESPN leads to background calls to doubleclick.net, Casale Media, Nielsen. Here's what you can do to see what's going on in the background of your websites. All right, whatever browser you have is going to have some sort of developer mode. Access developer mode. This is what it looks like. Go to the network connections and you're going to see stuff that happens in the background. So you now see how the tracking occurs in real time as you go to the website. So our conclusion here is Skynet gathers a bunch of data. The Matrix analyzes these things. And when you analyze enough things at scale, you build a model for human behavior, and then you can start picking things out. And I know exactly what you're thinking before you do. Why? Because humans in general, we're not really original. We all came up with the wheel. We all figured out that we gotta cook food and it tastes a little bit better. And we all built pyramids. Even across thousands of years of separation, humans kind of do the same thing. The computers are starting to pick this up. The algorithms are figuring out this behavior. So all we have to do now is live our life, and it knows what we're doing before we are going to do it. But it gets a little worse. If you've stuck around this long, get ready. There's a shift that is happening where these models are going from predicting behavior to manipulating behavior. As an advertiser, this is advantageous to me because instead of me trying to predict what you're going to want, I'm going to tell you what you want. There are two topics that we're going to discuss here. First, it is nudge theory. Nudge theory says that you can nudge humans to what you consider a favorable behavior by tapping into some of the base instincts. For example, as we saw in the previous video, humans naturally make eye contact. So when you put eye trackers on somebody and a baby is facing forward, as is here, the human eye immediately goes to the baby's eyes. As an advertiser, I don't want that. I want you to look at my ad. So I'm going to nudge you to look at the ad by simply turning the baby's face. Now, as a human, I see another human. They're looking in that direction. I naturally look in that direction. Think about it. You walk into a room. There are 30 people. They are all looking at the right back corner. You immediately are going to also look at the right back corner. If there's a loud sound in a room, everyone automatically turns to the side, correct? This is just human nature. That is nudge. Then you combine nudging with neuromarketing, which is applying the principles of neuroscience to marketing, and you come up with a term that I call neuro-nudging. Neuro-nudging has been shown to be effective at scale at pivotal times during human history. And I want to preface all of this by saying that I respect everyone, and I'm simply presenting academic material, and sometimes academic material is a little sensitive. As you can see here by these articles in the British Medical Journal, NIH, and the United Nations Food Program themselves, these large organizations have admittedly engaged in at-scale nudging campaigns. They have moved human behavior towards what they feel were favorable outcomes. Are they favorable outcomes as a whole? I don't know. I don't care. I do what I want. But it is important for us to understand that Skynet and the Matrix are now evolving to try and manipulate human behavior. Those who are in control of it are able to manipulate human behavior. Sometimes it may be entities that don't have what you consider to be your best interest in mind. Only you can decide what is your best interest. What I'm doing here is simply presenting you some examples of at-scale large organization neuro-nudging efforts in order to make you aware of neuro-nudging as a whole. Think about this now. You have neuro-nudging, which is an effective system by which you can manipulate human behavior. You now add artificial intelligence generated bots who are almost indistinguishable from humans. And then you at scale build a bot farm. And then you end up with really effective ways by which to almost control human behavior. Let's have a little bit of a difficult discussion. Let's talk about a touchy subject. Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is arguably the biggest thing in the world right now. She can do no wrong. She sold out a concert in Argentina. People don't have money for food, but somehow they were able to figure out how to pay for these ridiculous ticket prices. Why were they so ridiculous? Some argue, as cited in these articles, don't cancel me, Swifties. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying this person said, these articles say that bots created artificial scarcity or contributed to the scarcity and drove up all of these prices. So it may not be that people were immediately willing to pay the $2,000-$3,000 for nosebleed seats, but they were left with no option because of the bots. Combine this with the recent Drake lawsuit, which stated that the music industry uses bots in order to promote artists. Were bots used to promote Taylor Swift and create artificial demand for her music and artificial adulation of fans? I don't know. Don't cancel me. I'm just saying We should be asking these questions and looking into these things because the technology is there to make it happen. And as evidenced by these articles and this lawsuit, it isn't so much of a stretch for someone to theorize that. Then let's have a little bit more of a hard conversation. Let's look at this quote and let's try to objectively think of adjectives that were used to describe someone who said this in 2020. Now the year is 2023. The drastic change in the way someone who said this was perceived may be attributed to the fact that bots were running rampant in 2020. The point of this one is love your neighbor. Your neighbor is not your enemy. Be excellent to each other. And don't fall for the bots and the neuro-nudging.